Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 411 Ground and Pound MMA podcast, your weekly look into the wide, wacky, wonderful world of mixed martial arts. And not so much the wackiness, but it was pretty wide this last week. I'm Robert Winfrey. I'm your host for the show. Thank you all very much for tuning in. However you found us, YouTube, the 411 Mania website, Google Music, I think that's what... or Apple Music rather, instead of, because I think that's what replaced iTunes. Transistor. I don't care how you find us. I care that you listen. Thank you very much. And please share this around with anyone you know who might be interested in the show. We're trying to continue to build this thing here. So please do that. Your continued support, however you give it to us, is always, always appreciated. Thank you very much. All right, on the agenda this week will be a review of yesterday morning here in the United States, UFC 242. Really good card on paper, pretty good card in practice. We'll be previewing UFC on ESPN Plus 16? Yeah, 16 for next week, which I am so excited about. I can't begin to express how much I'm looking forward to that main event. Oh, that's going to be good. And then news of the week, because there was news of the week, and we'll get into some of that stuff. So let's go ahead and jump into that. Back with me after a couple of weeks off on other projects due to some scheduling stuff, just being a busy human being. 411 Mania's Jack of all trades, Jeff Harris, is here again. Jeff, nice to have you back. How you doing?
Congrats to Zhang Weili.
Close enough.
The first, well, how is it pronounced?
I don't know. Again, I've been pronouncing it Weili.
Weili.
Weili is probably also acceptable.
The first Chinese UFC champion. That was a heck of a win last weekend. Sorry I couldn't be here for that.
It's all right. It happens.
That was a good fight, though.
For as long as it lasted, yeah.
All 42 seconds. Sorry I missed the show for that, but that was a great victory, and Zhang's was Andrade, I guess, just was too aggressive in that fight.
Yeah, she just kind of walked into a really nice straight counter right, and Zhang never let her recover.
Has that ever really? I don't know if that's ever really happened to her like that before. It's not in the UFC.
Not within that same context. I mean, the entire first round of her fight with Namajunas did a number on her on the feet. And Joanna Jędrzejczyk did a lot of that same stuff, but doesn't have the power that Zhang brings, apparently. Yeah, because she's been hit a lot, but she hasn't really been staggered like that all that consistently. And then, again, all credit in the world to Zhang for just never letting her even approximate recovery.
But for last night, you're one of the biggest Khabib fans I know. You must have been...
You must not know a lot of people.
In high heaven last night. I'm sure Pat Mullen was too, if he was watching it. He also loves Khabib. And, I mean, he predicted Khabib to go on this run, so... He anointed Khabib, and he's on his way to becoming one of the greatest ever.
Yeah, the main event from last night, or yesterday, there's just so much muscle memory around last night for an event. Yesterday, Khabib Nurmagomedov defeats Dustin Poirier via submission, rear naked choke in the third round. And, it's... I want to start with you on this one. What were your thoughts on this fight generally?
Do you want my honest opinion?
Yeah, sure.
I thought it was a valiant performance by Dustin Poirier. I think he clearly came not to lose. You know, in the past, we've seen title competitors come in, they fight the champion, and they're just content to really not even do anything for 5 rounds. I mean, do you remember Jake Shields' performance against GSP, Robert?
Yes, I do.
I thought what was so interesting about that matchup all those years ago at UFC 129, Jake Shields actually had a ground game that could possibly counter or perhaps even be competitive with what GSP was known for at the time. And yet, not even once did he even try to go to the ground with GSP, and I just thought that was bizarre. And Shields' stand-up has never been one of his better attributes, but the fact that he was just content to just stand and box in an inferior fashion with GSP for 5 rounds, it kind of rankled me. And, last night, Poirier, he got like thrashed in that first round. I think you would agree that could have been a 10-8 first round, right?
Yes, I believe that's what I had it.
Probably was a 10-8 first round. Came out, was ready to bang, and he hurt Khabib and had him wobbled in the second round. He was clearly doing damage with his stand-up. And then Khabib rallied back in the second round, probably edged out the second round. I think you would probably agree.
I do.
Okay, I would agree with that. And Khabib shoots in, leaves his neck wide open, and that was clearly a choke. That was a very tight choke at one point. But I realized once he had it sunk in, and he was holding on to it. When you hold on for that long and you're not submitting your opponent, it is not a death knell, but it is a bad, it's almost like a last-ditch attempt, because when you overcommit to a guillotine choke, you burn out your arms, and right after that, Khabib was finally able to secure the rear naked choke on Dustin. But I give so much credit to Dustin because he did not go in there to lose that fight. He went in there to win. He clearly tried. He tried to change things up. Came back and survived a really rough first round. Didn't wilt after getting thrashed in the first round by Khabib, and he still fought to try and win the fight. And, we see a guy like Ricardo Lamas finally complaining about getting turned over for a title opportunity against Jose Aldo. And finally get in there and basically do jack squat. We see plenty of title competitors do that. Dustin did not do that. He did everything in his power to try and win. And he still became very much closer than anyone else has in the past to finishing Khabib Nurmagomedov, not even Conor McGregor. And
Conor never got close.
Exactly. So I think that just says a lot about Dustin's growth over the past several years, how he has gotten better. It says a lot about, I think, how good Khabib is. And here's my this is what I'm getting at. I am so excited about this matchup for Tony Ferguson. And I am praying this matchup with Tony Ferguson finally happens, because now more than ever, I am firmly of the belief that Tony Ferguson is the man that beats Khabib more than anything.
I think there are a grand total of 2 people that I believe have interesting matchups with Khabib at this point.
Because Khabib, for a couple reasons. One, he's very hittable. He is very hittable. Khabib is a supreme grappler, wrestler, takedown artist. His ground game is probably second to none in the lightweight division. However, he showed holes in his game last night. He overcame adversity, and he was never really that hurt, and clearly cardio was not an issue for him last night. He didn't get tired. He was able to keep up a very high pace and a lot of high output, high volume, high offense last night. Tony Ferguson can do that no problem. And not only that, Tony Ferguson is a better striker than Dustin.
Yeah.
Khabib is hittable, Robert.
Yes, he is. His defense is not his strong suit.
He's very hittable, and I saw holes in his game that Tony Ferguson can exploit. And I think if Dustin was a little more aggressive at the outset, that could have changed the whole complexion of the fight. Maybe not, he would not have won, but he really waited until the second round to kind of let his hands go and start opening up with his strikes. I think he used a few too many kicks, which is not something you want to do against a wrestler like Khabib. But overall, I thought it was a great fight. You know, the Abu Dhabi crowd really deserved that, you know, going all the way back to that main event of Anderson Silva and Talis Latis. No, wait, I'm sorry. That was it was Anderson Silva versus Damian Maia in Abu Dhabi, right? The same night.
Yeah, I believe that happened.
BJ Penn versus Frankie. Sorry about that.
Yeah, they've been back there. They've been back there since then. Didn't Roy Nelson and Big Nog fight there?
I think they had one. This was the third. So that was the first. This was the third.
Yeah, the Nogueira and Nelson fight night took place from there.
But it has been a number of years. Khabib is cementing his legacy, and unfortunately, it's just going to be Tony Ferguson, El Kukui, who's going to be the one to snap it. So I'm sorry, Khabib fans. The reign is. If this fight with Tony Ferguson happens, it's coming to an end. The Khabib dynasty. So
I don't know. That's I've said for the last 4 years. I think that's the best fight in MMA, and I really want to see it. There's plenty of ways that both men have their strengths match up with the other's weakness, and I am deeply intrigued by that fight on a great many levels, and I don't think there's been a parallel to what that fight is. Maybe in UFC history, certainly not in lightweight history. I mean, again, that fight has been, they've tried to make it 4 times. Now, this is one of those instances where I'm not throwing accusations at anybody because the UFC's tried to make it. The fighters have both signed for it. This is not the UFC kind of screwing around. It's not one fighter making unreasonable demands. The reason this hasn't happened is just outside the cage insanity in a couple of instances. But the first time... What?
More than a couple.
Yeah. Again, 4 times. Each guy's pulled out twice. The first time they tried to make it, this fight represented a great fight between rising contenders. Second time they tried to make it, it represented a great fight between rising contenders. The third time they tried to make it, it represented basically a number 1 contenders fight. And the fourth time they tried to make it, it represented an actual title fight. And each time this fight has fallen through, by the time it comes back around to being a thing, all they've done is win. Neither guy has lost. These are 2 12-fight winning streaks. Khabib might be 13 now, actually. I think Khabib is 12 at lightweight, 13 overall because of the catchweight fight with Horcher. And Tony's, 12 in a row. That doesn't happen. This fight, every time they try to make it, it both makes more sense and is a higher stakes fight every time. I can't think of another instance of that being the case for a fight in the UFC. Especially not when it's when what's happened is, okay, we make the fight, it falls through, both guys win 2 more fights against good opposition and look good doing so. And then we try to make it again, and it falls apart, and they go back to winning against higher levels of opposition over and over and over again. I don't think that situation has occurred before. It's largely unique as far as the history of the UFC. That fight has to be next. It's the only fight to make. And again, Tony presents some very interesting challenges for Khabib, and vice versa. There's only one other fight, I think, at lightweight that presents, to my mind, some potentially interesting challenges for Khabib. And I'm not sure how viable that is. We'll see next week, because Justin Gaethje does offer some things that I'm curious to see Khabib respond to. But other than that, I think what Khabib does so well is attack fighters. How do I say this? There's a bit of strategy, or I hate to say tech, but that's also kind of what it is. There's a thing in the course of a fight. There is a philosophy and a strategy and a sequence of events that have, through repetition and results, become the consensus best practice for this position. And Khabib is pretty much the only guy who does this right now, but that's the area he attacks. And the only way, I think, to really kind of make a dent in his offense involves changing that dynamic. Because what Khabib does so well is, once he gets you down, and don't get me wrong, his takedowns are really good, his chaining together of them is good, his ability to remain stuck to you is paramount to his success. But the whole time you're doing what is considered best practices in terms of how do you react to be taken down in MMA. You scoot to the fence, you build yourself up to your seat or your knees, you turn over, again, you get to your base, you build up, you wall walk. That's what everyone does. That's been the best practice in the sport for 5 years. Probably more than that, but let's say 5. And that doesn't work against Khabib. He has figured out a way, through his skill set, to attack what is considered best practice in that area. And if you want to beat him, I don't think you can do that. I genuinely don't think your response to being taken down can be scoot to the fence, build your base, stand back up, because most of his game is built around the physical destruction of you while you're trying to do that. And I don't think Tony will. I think if he fights Tony, Tony's response to that is different. I'm not going to say better or worse, but it is different. That's one of the reasons I think Gaethje presents a few interesting questions, because Gaethje's good at stopping takedowns and is also a bit of a madman. I just think Khabib has developed a game that at the moment is profoundly refined at attacking the expected procedures that everyone goes through. And
I mean, as refined as it is, though, he gets hit a lot.
Well, refined in this case references specifically that his skill set in that one area. Yeah, his striking defense does leave stuff to be desired.
Mm-hmm.
But he's been hit. Again, Conor hit him a couple of times. Michael Johnson hit him a few times. Poirier hit him cleanly here, and Poirier is probably the hardest hitter out of all of those guys.
Sports betting is listing the odds for this fight at plus 210 versus minus 250, which I think is fair. That's
probably about right.
So, I'm not a big odds guy, but I think that's a fair, just because of Khabib's momentum. But to me, it's not a lopsided set of odds, you know?
No, it's also designed to encourage betting. I imagine if that fight gets made, by the time betting closes, it would probably be slightly favored to Khabib, probably somewhere in the neighborhood of minus 150 to 130.
Right. I think that makes sense. But I think people are riding the Khabib bandwagon too hard right now, and once that happens, that's when the top fighter always loses.
Everyone loses eventually, except Floyd Mayweather.
Floyd Mayweather. That should be on a T-shirt.
Well, if we're talking about college wrestling, we can add Cael Sanderson to that list, because he never lost throughout his entire collegiate career. It's just a stupid achievement.
Right.
That's an unbelievably difficult thing to do. He's the only one who's done it.
Right.
Well, D1. He's the only one who's done it.
What about after collegiate wrestling?
If we're talking international wrestling, both freestyle and Greco-Roman, no. Like even the best Greco-Roman wrestler of all time has 2 losses on his record. Now, bear in mind, his final record. This is Alexander Karelin. His final international record of competition was like 168-2.
But the point I want to underscore here, Robert, is a lot of people saw dominance from Khabib last night in just all the things he did well. But if I'm a person who wants to fight and try to beat Khabib, like I saw a gold mine last night. And I'm not saying, well, yes, I am saying Tony is going to beat him because I am confident about that. But he didn't look unbeatable to me. I'm sorry. Just like I think Israel Adesanya is getting so overhyped right now, and people are practically anointing him the next Anderson Silva.
He's better than Anderson.
I mean, I don't know. I'm not sold on this guy yet.
I'm not sure how
I'm picking Robert Whittaker to beat him, frankly.
That's where I lean, but I can see how Adesanya beats Whittaker. I can see that very clearly, actually,
sure.
as I've given more thought to that fight.
I'm just saying, I think he gave up too much against Gastelum.
Some of it's also how Gastelum fights. I mean, again, Gastelum is a significantly underappreciated fighter in many respects.
I'm just saying, when Anderson Silva manipulated people and mind-effed them so hard that when he got in the cage with them, they froze up. And even when they were having success, it always just looked like because Anderson had not pulled the trigger yet, and Anderson was just waiting to do something horrible to them. I just don't get that from Israel Adesanya. Well, I think
there's a lot of that same.
He has some good skills. I'm just not convinced he's this like amazing. I mean, it kind of reminds me of Darren Till, honestly.
No, he's fought a much better level of opposition than Till and has proven himself much more definitively.
Well,
I mean, Till's big claim to fame was the win over Thompson that I didn't even think he won. Like Adesanya has comprehensively bested very, very good fighters.
Brad Tavares.
Yeah, Brad Tavares has an overall winning record, I think, still in the UFC. Again, like
44-year-old Anderson Silva.
Yeah, that was nothing. Like that was nothing to write home about.
His best win is Kelvin Gastelum.
That's true. Yeah, that's an accurate statement.
He has some solid wins. Derek Brunson and Brad Tavares are solid wins. Kelvin Gastelum is a good win. But that's just, to me, he's only had 3 really solid wins in the UFC by comparison.
Well, he's also only had 6 fights.
Right.
I mean, 50% of your fights, all of which if you've won all of your fights in the UFC, and 3 of them are against really good levels of opposition,
and only one of those was a finish.
I think
two. Sorry,
I think finishes are overrated.
Yeah.
I generally kind of think that the ability to finish, while important, is significantly overblown.
They matter in the overall scheme of things. Is he capable of finishing top-level opponents?
I mean, look, I maintain this about the Gastelum fight. Anyone but Kelvin Gastelum, he'd have finished that night.
Maybe.
I mean, plenty of other fighters, when subjected to half the abuse that Gastelum withstood, have crumpled.
So,
not saying that no one but Kelvin could have survived it, but
I think people are Khabib is great. Don't get me wrong, but I think people are drinking the Kool-Aid now.
Yeah, there's probably a bit of that.
And I think it happens with a lot of. I think it happens with a lot of top fighters. I think it happened with Conor. Happened with Lyoto Machida back in the day.
True.
look, Lyoto Machida did amazing things, and he created a style that was very sort of, I think, groundbreaking and was very effective. But like once, you know, when he obliterated Thiago Silva and Rashad Evans, I think people thought he was going to stay on top for a long time, and it just didn't happen. And then he had a few more awkward performances after that. You know, once he made it to the top level, he wasn't able to be that consistent. I just think, I've said before, pundits like to believe that there's this one magical fighter who has like the whole sport in his hands and has everything figured out. And they almost like with celebrities, people like the punditry likes to deify these fighters and believe they're unbeatable, you know?
Yeah, MMA is at the moment, MMA is entirely too complex and still evolving. No one has it all figured out. And
I mean, am I being unfair? Because I feel like the biggest offender 10 years ago, it was Fatal. Before the loss to Verdun, really.
Yeah, no, there was a lot of people who genuinely thought Fedor was never going to lose. And again, everyone loses if you do this enough. I mean, again, if Floyd was still fighting relevant opposition right now, he'd have lost by now.
It's just process of elimination.
It's just enough repetition with enough variables. Eventually, it happens.
Yeah.
It's one of the reasons people being that successful over that long a period of time is so rare, especially in combat sports. I mean, again, I suppose one of the bizarre things is that the people who go on those long runs do tend to have areas that you think others could exploit. But for some reason, it just never winds up working out for whatever reason. I'm thinking specifically of Rocky Marciano, who's at the moment the only heavyweight boxing champion to retire undefeated.
But what do you think about what I said about Poirier? You know, valiant performance.
Oh, absolutely.
Nothing to be ashamed of. Didn't go into that fight to walk away with a loss.
No, he came to fight, and a lot of credit to him. He tried a lot of different stuff.
He fought like a guy who believed he could win, and you have to do that. You have to go into a fight with Khabib with that mindset. Otherwise, it's a lost cause. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah. I mean, again, he came in, had a really bad first round, recovered, had a good beginning to the second. I mean, that shifting right that he landed that was the cleanest Khabib's been hit in the UFC, I think.
Hit him with a knee that looked like it, did something to him.
Well, I think Poirier's second round fell apart when he tried a body kick that Khabib blocked with his elbow, because his left leg was not the same for the rest of that round.
Yeah, and you do not want to try, to throw. You don't want to try to throw that. I think that was his flaw, was throwing too many kicks against a guy like Khabib. It's not a good strategy.
I think the only one of those that actually hurt him was, again, the one where he did some kind of damage to his leg or foot for the round.
Yeah, but you don't want to throw too many against Khabib because of his grappling game and because of the wrestling.
Well, I don't even think Khabib got takedowns or clinches off of kicks much in that fight. I'm gonna have to rewatch it to remember more specifically.
Be right, but I mean, I just think it's.
Well, you also don't want to only throw punches, because punches are easy to defend.
I don't think he did much, but I don't think he did much with his kicks anyway, as I recall last night.
No, he had a couple of decent leg kicks early, just as kind of probing things, getting him thinking about it. He landed a couple of good body kicks. He
left his neck wide open on that takedown shot in round 3. And
he usually does that. That's a deliberate choice on his part.
That could be a death sentence against Tony Ferguson, Robert. Tony Ferguson's submission game is maybe not A+, but it is formidable. It is very formidable.
It is, but Tony's also not a guillotine guy. And just for the record, the reason that Khabib goes for the head outside single as opposed to the head in the center takedown when he does that is a deliberate choice on his part. His father's actually of the tactical opinion that it's better to risk the guillotine and then fight it off.
He's gotten guys in a Darce choke before.
Not a guillotine. It's a very different setup.
Right.
Again, I'm not disagreeing with you about
from a guillotine position into a Darce, though.
You can, but not from your back like that. I'm not disagreeing with you about Tony's submission prowess.
Tony has good transitioning ability. He's good off of his back, and he's very good in the scrambles too.
Yes. Again, I'm not disagreeing with you about the totality of Tony's submission game. It's about this one position in particular.
But just because we haven't seen it before, it doesn't mean he's capable of doing that.
That is true.
Because I mean, you know, the thing we have to take into account, we're in an MMA fight. We're not likely to ever predict an outcome that has never happened before, but that does not eliminate the possibility of that outcome. Case in point, Joanna Jędrzejczyk getting knocked out by Rose Namajunas.
Mm-hmm. No, that's very true.
Joanna had never been finished or knocked up. Why did I say that? Knocked out up to that point in her career, and we didn't predict that. Like, very few people would predict that outcome because it's not known to happen. And the point I'm making here is Tony Ferguson has an amazing submission grappling game that I think can compete with Khabib and give him problems. And Khabib has to be careful not to leave his neck out like that, because I think it's possible. If it's possible for anyone, I think it's possible a guy like Tony could exploit that position. I'm sorry.
No, it is. And again, Khabib does that intentionally because if you shoot with your head on the outside, your neck is vulnerable to being wrapped. But if you shoot with your head in the center, you're significantly more vulnerable to knees and uppercuts.
If he's not intentionally, he has to be careful because someone might make him pay for it one of these days.
Yeah. I mean, again, anytime you shoot in, you're taking there is that risk. I mean, and in the case of Khabib, it's a deliberate tactical choice.
I think we can. Yeah, go ahead.
It's his father who I think has this generalized perspective, and Abdulmanap knows more about fighting than I do, so I'm not going to say he's wrong. I'm saying this is his perspective based on his years of doing this kind of stuff, and whether you agree or disagree, I leave up to you. He believes that shooting with your head on the outside, it does risk the guillotine, but it's safer overall to risk that and then fight it off than shoot with your head in the center and risk being timed for an uppercut or a knee strike that could just knock you unconscious. And again, whether you out there in the world happen to agree or disagree with that kind of take on the scenario, I leave up to you. It is not how do I say this? He is not incorrect in his generalized assessment as far as that goes. Because those are the two risks. I
think we can go ahead and move on to the co-main event. How did you score? I want to know, how did you score the co-main event?
29-28 Barboza. There was some... Okay, I have to say this if we're going to move on to Felder versus Barboza, because this pertains to the rest of the card.
I also scored it for Barboza, but...
There was some terrible judging last night. Just terrible.
Right.
Now, let me be... As far as this fight goes... I am sympathetic to 29-28 Felder. Felder wins the third round. I don't think that's really in dispute.
Oh, because we had two judges going 30-27 both ways.
In opposite directions. That is so stupid.
I always hate it. I hate it when that happens so much. And that never
especially
happens.
In a fight like this where it's utterly unwarranted. I have no earthly idea how you can give Paul Felder the first or Edson Barboza the third.
Yeah, I think
that boggles my
those
mind.
weren't even marginal rounds, in my opinion.
Like, the second round is...
It's the second round where we would have a debate.
Yeah, and I scored the second round for Barboza. I am sympathetic to an argument for Felder winning that round. It was a close round.
I'm sympathetic to the fight being a draw, Robert. I'm sorry.
I don't think you can give the second round a 10-10. I don't
Really?
think... I don't know. It didn't feel like a 10-10 round to me. It might if I rewatch it.
Barboza had that takedown in the second round.
And then he managed to get torn up with elbows from the bottom.
I felt like Barboza marginally had I think he barely outpointed the second round.
Yeah, that was my thought. Again,
marginally. Like, I thought it was a marginal 10-9.
Yeah.
First round I thought was solid. Like,
that's a Barboza round.
What was strange, the fight greatly resembled their first one.
In a lot of ways, yeah.
Like almost identically. Except the second round was a lot closer. Honestly, but I'm not that broken up about Felder getting the decision. I think the more heinous thing is the two 30-27 scores.
Yeah, again, I don't hate Paul Felder winning the fight. If you just told me, if I watched the fight and you said Paul Felder wins via split decision and I don't know the scorecards, I disagree, but okay. It comes down to one round. That was a competitive round. Okay, fair enough. If you tell me that there's 30-27 for each guy...
But here's my issue. I feel like in this whole 10-point must system scenario, I don't really feel like either guy really won. Like, in two judges' opinions, Felder won this fight. In one judge's opinion, Barboza won. But it wasn't a decisive... I don't really feel like it was a decisive fight for either guy. It was back and forth. It was fairly even.
It was a very competitive fight, and again, I scored it for Barboza.
Feel like either guy won. I'm not saying I want a rubber match, but I mean, and here's the other thing: Barboza constantly disappoints me, Robert. Constantly.
Yeah, that's on your expectations of him.
I mean, I almost hesitate to say he's a choke artist, but he's kind of a choke artist.
I don't think he's a choke artist so much as he is because
unless maybe this is his ceiling. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's more what it is. Like, and here's the other thing about Barboza at this point in time. This is a guy who's been in the UFC since 2010.
So he's a longtime veteran.
Again, 9 years in the UFC. And in that time, look at the people he's fought. I mean, he debuted against a nobody who he stopped with leg kicks. Fights Anthony Njokuani, who a lot of you may not remember from his WEC run, but I do.
Good fighter in the WEC. Never amounted to much in the UFC.
No.
But
again, never made the tough opponent.
A tough opponent.
Third fight in the UFC, he fights Ross Pearson, who in 2011 was, pretty well near his prime. Right. Fights Terry Adam, fights Jamie Varner, former WEC champion. Lucas Martins, who had a few good wins in the UFC. Rafael Oliveira, scrubbed out. Danny Castillo, Donald Cerrone, Evan Dunham, Bobby Green, Michael Johnson, Paul Felder, Tony Ferguson.
Danny Castillo was not a world-class opponent, but he was a long-time veteran of the WEC UFC.
And not an easy fight for even the guys who beat him.
Tough opponent, right? Fair enough. Even Evan Dunham was a tough opponent, and Bobby Green.
Yeah, when they fought, not easy fights. Fights Michael Johnson, fights Paul Felder, fights Tony Ferguson, fights Anthony Pettis, fights Gilbert Melendez, fights Beneil Dariush, fights Khabib, fights Kevin Lee, fights Dan Hooker, fights Justin Gaethje, fights Paul Felder again. Like, this guy has been in the Shark Tank for 9 years.
But what I've noticed is he cannot win. He's good enough to get into the top 10, or just outside the top 5, but he can't beat a top 5 opponent.
I think he has too many habits at this point that are documented and exploitable by people by guys at the highest level. And just a lot at this point, again, he's kind of set in his ways a little bit.
Let me look at the top 5 lightweights.
That should be
Poirier might be a competitive fight for him.
I think Dustin would smoke him.
I would pick Dustin, but that might be a decent matchup for him, especially coming off a loss to Khabib. Tony's already lost to Tony. Conor McGregor, what do you think?
I think Conor would probably beat him.
Really?
I mean, look.
Yeah,
I mean, here's the big knock on Barboza. What's he do when he's pressured? What's Conor McGregor do? He pressures you.
Donald, even at this point,
I wouldn't. You know what? I wouldn't hate that rematch actually.
Did they fight? Oh yeah.
Yeah, Ceronne beat him
he
years
lost
ago.
Ceronne.
But I wouldn't hate that rematch.
But here's my point. He's already lost to all these guys in the top 5. Or if they fought again, I'd pick all these guys in the top 5 to beat him.
Yeah, again, the only one that I think I might pick him to beat Ceronne at this point, but other than that, no, I pick everyone else against him.
Yeah. Or all these other guys have fought and beaten him already.
It's a tough spot. Again, this is a guy who's been in the trenches for a long time, has done a lot of good work.
Tough division.
Yeah, I think we've not only seen his ceiling as far as what he could do at his best. I think we're seeing him now hit the downside of his career.
Now, I want to look at the judges who scored this fight on MMA decisions. We do not have the judging data up for.
We might not get it at all. The UFC does self-regulate. Was self-regulating for
that, and this is kind of my main issue with UFC kind of handling itself in these places where there's no athletic commission. I don't want to say it's sketchy, but it feels a little sketchy to me. I mean,
when they announced this decision, because I was doing a recorded commentary for the main card with Mark Radulich, plug for that thing you can find now on the internet. I said, I'm waiting for commentary in like 5 minutes to come on the air and say, there was an error tabulating the judges' scorecards for the co-main event. That's what I thought was going to happen.
I mean, I don't know if this is true, but I remember hearing scuttlebutt on the underground forums that for the first Abu Dhabi card, like they got their judges from Nevada.
I think that's true. I'd have to double check.
And I just thought is it Doug Crosby when he scored Penn versus Edgar the first fight, 50-45 Frankie Edgar. I thought that was offensive.
That's a ridiculous score for that.
And
fight.
I don't know if this is true, but like again, this is just people on the underground. And there are people on the industry who post on the underground, and even back then. Doug Crosby posted on the underground, and after the fight, he was trolling fans on his score for Edger versus Penn. This is documented. This happened. He went on the forums, and he was like just doing trolling internet posting, like basically, I'm not going to say it, but S posting. You know the saying S posting, Robert?
I do.
Okay. Expletive posting. He was expletive posting about Penn versus Edger. And I heard that the athletic commission at the time was upset with him over that. They didn't ban him over it, but I heard they were upset. And
I would have been personally. If I were in the athletic commission shoes, I would not have been happy with him doing that.
I would have suspended or blocked him over that behavior, quite frankly. So I don't know what's going on here. If the athletic commission has some autonomy here or some authority if they're getting the judges on loan from an athletic commission. I don't really understand. I don't understand all the ins and outs of UFC self-regulating, but I'm a little bothered that I can't look up the data and scores for this fight. You know, I'm a little bothered.
Well, there's some of it's the UFC self-regulating. Some of it's a bit the part of the world they're in. I mean, the United Arab Emirates is more on the forward-thinking side of things, all things considered, but that's also not a place in the world where, even to the extent that MMA journalism could be considered quasi-combative or investigative,
right?
You really don't want to do that there.
Okay,
it's not safe.
Well, you have the gamut of MMA media at this event. You have people who are outside that sphere of influence at this event.
Who probably don't, and again, I imagine there's a bunch of people who just didn't know to ask, and anyone who did know to ask just decided not to.
All right, maybe you don't want to ask Brett Ratner on how this works, but
Mark Ratner.
What did I say, Brett Ratner?
You did.
Yes, it's called a Freudian slip.
That's okay. I understand.
Brett Ratner. All right, I think we can move on from that, and I think we can.
Paul Felder said he would like to fight someone in the top 5.
Fair play. He beat number 7.
I don't know who would be in his immediate future. It's a bit of. Yeah, you could do that. Is Iaquinta still ranked that highly?
He's ranked number 6 at the moment.
So the top 5 off the top of my head is probably still going to be in some order. Khabib, Tony, Dustin, Conor, and who's the 5th?
Oh, look, Conor's not going to come back for a fight with him.
I'm not disagreeing. I'm just saying what I think the rankings are.
I want a fun fight. I want a winnable fight. I'll fight Paul Felder.
I'm not disagreeing with you about that fight ever happening. I'm saying I think Conor is still actually ranked highly as far as that goes.
He's ranked number 3.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. Why is Ceronne 4? Okay, Ceronne and Gaethje are the other ones kind of in the top picture there.
It's MMA rankings. What can you do?
It is.
Ally Quinta. That wouldn't be a bad fight, I think.
I'll be okay. You could do him.
Is Iaquinta okay with that fight? I don't know.
Iaquinta's fighting Dan Hooker in Australia.
That's a good matchup. Well, maybe you could fight the winner.
Yeah, I think I saw that. Yeah, have him fight the winner of that, or maybe the loser of Ceronne Gaethje, kind of thing. But
has Felder fought Ceronne?
I do not believe so.
Dang. That would be a good fight too, quite frankly.
I agree with that. No, he's never fought.
I'm sure Ceronne would probably like that fight. That's the type of fight he likes.
Ceronne will fight anybody, man.
Yeah, but I think Ceronne would enjoy being in a matchup and like promoting a fight with Paul Felder.
Yeah, those two seem like they'd get along, have a few beers, fight week.
I'm happy for Felder because he's such a nice guy, and I feel like he's a credit to this industry, and I'm happy for him on an emotional level.
Yeah,
because he just seems like the nicest guy, and I'm happy that he has success. And you could tell he really wanted this win. To me, it's not the most emphatic victory, and that was my main issue.
I'd agree with that. Very briefly, just on the main event. If you're not on an emotional level devastated for Dustin Poirier, you're probably more dead inside than I am. Because even I felt a twinge in my cold, dead heart about when Dustin Poirier's deeply emotional, talking about how he feels he let himself and everyone else down, and mentioning how he's going to have to live with his failure for the rest of his life. And
bawling in front of the whole media at the press conference, practically.
I mean, that was a man deeply invested in this fight who worked for, a lot of years.
I respect that, man. I respect a guy who wears his emotions on his sleeves. And I feel like he has nothing to be ashamed of, though, because I feel like he gave it his all.
Yeah, I agree with that. And Dustin Poirier is also one of the few guys in this sport who, based on all available evidence at the moment, is a genuinely decent human being.
I mean, he's going to use the charity money from Khabib and Dana White to build homes for pygmy Ugandans. That's what he was talking about last night.
I think he's looking to rebuilding an orphanage and rebuilding part of a water tower because they had some flooding that destroyed the irrigation system they had.
I mean, he's a better man than I am. I have no problem admitting that.
Much as I wish in his position that I'd do something similar, and I kind of do actually, but not to that degree, and certainly not that publicly. So you know what? He's a genuinely great guy. So. All right. As for the rest of this card,
he doesn't get into trouble. I feel like he's been a good statesman for this.
When was the last time you heard anything negative about him?
I mean, his past, he had a rough past, a rough childhood, but he's gotten beyond all that, And
he was in was he in actual jail for a little bit of time? I think at one point.
He might have been he was a wild kid growing up, but
by his own admission, I'm not unearthing anything here.
Yeah, he grew out of that, and he's been nothing but total professional. He's he doesn't attack buses and throw dolly carts and railings and stuff, and
doesn't jump the fence and engage in brawls. Yeah, he's a genuinely decent guy. All right, as for the rest of this card, Islam Makhachev defeated Davi Hamosh via unanimous decision, 29-27, 30-26, 30-26. This fight was relatively uneventful for the first round or so. It picked up, I think, towards the latter half of the second and then a bit into the third when Makhachev started landing decent stuff. Solid enough win for Makhachev, who continues. That man's rolling a little bit right now, and he said he wanted the winner of Felder versus Barboza. I don't think that's in the cards necessarily, but he was ranked 15, I think, coming into this fight. I don't know if he's going to get bumped up at all or not, but he's due a bigger opportunity. And
or do I would say.
If he didn't have that period of inactivity, then yeah, I think I'll have to double check that I'm remembering the right guy. No, he's been active actually just during his UFC run. Yeah, he's due a bigger shot, and at a minimum, if not straight up overdue. Curtis Blades defeated Shamil Abdurrahimov via TKO in the second round. This fight sucked. It's heavyweights. Look, I think I saw someone else say this about Curtis Blades. I think it was Jack Slack, and I'm just going to repeat it. Curtis Blades is basically the Ryan Bader of heavyweight, which is kind of ironic because Bader now fights at heavyweight. But he's got decent enough striking when he chooses to use it, but more often than not, he's kind of afraid of you hitting him back, so he just shoots on you. He's got good wrestling. He's improved his passing game over the last couple of years, and his ground and pound has also come along because of it. It's not that he's got a bad game, because he doesn't, but he also benefits from heavyweight being a terrible division. And I think we've also seen his ceiling. And I don't just mean because he can't beat Francis Ngannou. I think he's going to be kind of that same Ryan Bader spot that Bader was in at light heavyweight. He's just going to hover around the top 5 or so, but he's never really going to break through. Diego Ferreira defeated Mirbek Taisimov via unanimous decision, 29-28 and then 2 29-27s. I expected what happened in the first round to happen for the whole fight, but because Taisimov had a really good first round, and then that just kind of fell apart. He never really had a plan B once Ferreira decided, all right, I'm just going to walk through his punches and swing back at him. And this also needs to be said about a lot of guys from last night. The heat in the arena, I think, was listed at something like 98 degrees. By the time you get down onto the mat with the lights on you and everything, you're probably into the hundreds. So there were a lot of guys who had performances that might have been a touch out of character just because of the environmental concerns. And not saying that Ferreira wouldn't have won anyway, because he could very well have. He just asked questions of Taisumov that Taisumov had no answers to. But there were a lot of people who noted just how hot it was in the cage that night, so just worth paying attention to. Joanne Calderwood defeated Andrea Lee via split decision, 129-28 for Lee, 130-27 for Calderwood, which is crap, and 129-28 for Calderwood, which I also disagree with, but is a more understandable scorecard, I guess. I thought Andrea Lee won the fight. Not a bad fight.
Title shot for Joanne. Title shot for JoJo, right?
Depending on what happens between Chikagian and crap, who's she fighting? Because Caitlin Chikagian has a fight coming up. I can't remember against who for the life of me off the top of my head. But depending on how that fight plays out, it's either
for Maya at 244.
Yeah,
So November.
It's either the winner of that fight or Joanne Calderwood after this win, depending on how timing works out and who looks better coming out of their fight, I suppose. Again, you could easily slot her in to just get beat up by Valentina for 5 rounds.
Just that it's very slim pickings right now at women's flyweight.
It is. That division is in pretty desperate need of an infusion of talent.
Right.
Zubaira Tuhugov and Lerone Murphy went to a split draw. There was 129-28 for Murphy and then 129-28 for each man and then 28-28. I'm okay with the draw. Lerone Murphy actually on somewhat short notice stepped up in a fairly big way. A lot of credit to him. He survived a really tough first round that is the reason this whole thing was a draw, as one judge thought Tuhugov earned a 10-8 first, which I don't disagree with. And then he just faded badly, and Murphy kind of kept on keeping on. So, not a terrible fight. Sarah Morris defeated Liana Jojua via TKO in the 3rd round. Jojua looked a full weight class smaller than Morris, and that's not a dig on Morris missing weight, though she did. I think Jojua is probably a more natural flyweight. Because Sarah Morris is not an exceptionally big bantamweight. Not a whole lot here. Jojua just does not look UFC ready. Otman Izatar, good grief, with a knockout of Timu Pakulin in the 1st round. Pakulin fell like a tree. He got hit behind the ear and flare flopped. Just thunk and faceplant. That was a brutal KO. That was gnarly. Bilal Muhammad defeated Takashi Sato via rear naked choke in the 3rd round. Bilal Muhammad continues to just be a difficult guy to deal with unless you're very, very good. I don't think he's ever really going to break through at welterweight. But he's a tough roadblock / gatekeeper for a lot of up-and-comers. Muslim Salikov knocked out Nordin Taleb in the 1st round with a punch. Good punch from Salikov. Omari Akhmedov defeated Zach Cummings via unanimous decision, 230-27s, 129-28. Not a lot there. Dan Madge defeated Feras Ziam via unanimous decision, 230-27s, 129-28. This was pretty dreadful. A lot of just fence wrestling at the low-level regional kind. Dreadful fight. All right, Jeff, what burning desires do you have from that group of fights, if any?
That's about it for right now.
All right. Again, main card, largely delivered. So thanks to that. Thanks to everyone who was reading along live at in the early morning / afternoon when this aired. Thanks to everyone who's read my full report over at 411mania.com in the MMA zone. Always appreciated. Thank you very much for your support. I don't know why you do, but God bless you, and I hope to earn it.
I do because I love your work, Robert.
Get higher standards. Anyway. my self-depreciation.
I can compliment you sometimes.
It is hard because I'm
trying to.
I appreciate. I mean, again, joking aside, thank you. I appreciate it. My ego is largely non-existent. All right, this coming Saturday, excuse me. Oh boy.
Your coverage, you know why I like your coverage? It's no BS, no nonsense. It's not flowery.
I have no time for tomfoolery or chicanery or any of or whimsy for that
Not
matter.
just that, it's not like really verbose. It's to the point, nitty gritty. You share your perspective, but you just do it in a natural, honest way.
I do appreciate that. Thank you. All right, Saturday. Ooh, again, this main event. I asked for this. I've been anticipating this for a long time, since before they announced it. The UFC is back in British Columbia. They'll be in Vancouver in particular. And okay, look, the card in totality is okay. Not great, it's okay. But the main event, Donald Cerrone versus Justin Gaethje. Oh, God, I don't even smoke, and I think I need a cigarette. Like, that is such a good fight.
I apologize to Donald and Justin's brain cells before this fight.
Yeah, these two maniacs are going to bludgeon the crap out of each other. Ooh, this is so good. Unfortunately for Donald Cerrone, Justin Gaethje is going to present essentially the same age-old question that Donald has struggled to answer his entire career. And that's, what's Donald Cerrone going to do when pressured this time? Now, Cerrone came up with a few different wrinkles to his game over the last, 3 years or less than that, actually.
He's a smart veteran.
He is. He added an intercepting knee strike to kind of just deter people who would just dive in at him. It slowed down Alexander Hernandez. It stopped Jim Miller from closing distance on him. It's a good tool. But it does kind of also rely on timing and your opponent diving to close distance rather than methodically closing distance.
And he doesn't use it a lot, but Gaethje does have a very good wrestling game.
He does, and he should actually mix it in a little bit more. I don't think he should become a grinder, but give your opponent something to think about. Both guys throw leg kicks that are pretty hellacious. Both guys have good punches, but Cerrone doesn't do well when really pressured and flustered. And Gaethje...
weak to the body. And he doesn't... Cerrone's never had the best takedown defense against wrestlers, historically.
Yeah, he does okay if he can see the shot coming, but Cerrone also... how do I say this? There's a very clear image in my head about the Jorge Masvidal fight in particular that I think crystallized this for me. Cerrone has kind of within his own head what he wants to do in the fight. And when that goes badly, he doesn't really deviate. He still does some things and tries techniques in certain situations that are just not good. Now, whether or not Gaethje can capitalize on them the same way that others have, somewhat remains to be seen. But I've seen Cerrone just struggle with pressure fighters consistently throughout his entire career. And Justin Gaethje is all pressure all the time. This is not to say that Cerrone's incapable of winning. He's going to hit Gaethje. Gaethje always gets hit. But is he going to be able to do so reliably with power while keeping his back off the fence, while avoiding getting hit in the face, while getting kicked in the leg really hard, because Gaethje kicks really hard? I don't know. This is a great fight. It's going to be action. It's going to be blood and guts. I would be surprised if this goes the distance, given how these two gentlemen fight. But I have to kind of lean towards Gaethje here. This is just a style that I'm not sure Cerrone really has found a consistent answer to. And I think Gaethje gets the win in another, again, blood and guts war for as long as it lasts. And I'm looking forward to this so much. I'm so looking forward to this fight. All right. How do you see this one?
I'm picking Gaethje. I think if Gaethje just gets into a sloppy brawl with Cerrone, I think he has a chance. But I like his power. I like his wrestling. And I think if he mixes it up a little bit, I feel like he has a tool set that will be able to beat with Sony and Cerrone. And if he pressures him, goes to the body, I think it's just going to be a bad night for Cerrone. And I think Gaethje has all the tools to defeat him. But we'll see. Cerrone, you can never count out Cerrone 100%. He is, my favorite UFC fighter, and I hope it's a good fight. I hope we get a couple rounds of just insane action.
Yeah, my hopes for this are kind of the same they were for Gaethje versus Barboza. I think in a perfect world, it goes about 7.5 minutes of insanity, and then one of them's unconscious. Gaethje and Barboza, of course, only went, I think, 3 minutes and change. Might have been less than that, but same general kind of principle.
I could see it going similarly to the Michael Johnson fight.
Yeah, that's kind of what I expect too, a little bit.
I don't know. I could see it ending in the first round. We'll see.
I think the longer it goes, the more there's actually kind of a sweet spot around round the latter half of round 3 and the start of round 4 that is probably Cerrone's best chance.
The biggest knock against Cerrone is he's a bit of a slow starter, but not always. He doesn't always give up that first round.
Not always. Again, I'm deeply, deeply looking forward to this fight. So
I hope it's a great fight.
Please, nothing happened to this fight. MMA gods, I ask you for shockingly little considering the crap we all put up with. Don't let anything happen to this fight. All right, we don't really have a finalized bout order yet. Hang on, that can't be right. I need to.
We do know we are getting a light heavyweight fight with Glover Teixeira and Nikita Krylov.
Wow. Okay. I think I have a bout order here. Okay, we're gonna go with this.
Teixeira Krylov?
Yeah, I think Glover Teixeira Krylov, I believe, is currently listed as your co-main event. Not a bad fight.
I'm going to go ahead and pick Teixeira here.
Much as I like Krylov in a lot of ways,
yeah.
he had a good win over in St. Preux. Not flashy, but he needed the win pretty badly. And he got back on the right side of things.
Type of opposition he beats. And Teixeira, older, been around for a long time, but he's still a solid, tough opponent, even at 39 years old.
Yeah, Teixeira's just an old warhorse at this point, and
battle-tested veteran.
I'm gonna pick Teixeira, but for the sake of the division, I kind of hope Krylov pulls it off. Because that division is in bad need of turnover.
Guys who are younger than 30.
That would be nice. At this point, I'd take less than 38. We don't even need people in their 20s. We need people not in their late 30s.
He's actually 27 years old. So
Krylov's very young.
That means Krylov might not even hit his prime yet, and he still has time to grow and get better.
Yeah, he does. And
look at Poirier. Poirier definitely had some maturation in his career over the last 3 years.
Yeah, I've been looking back at some Khabib fights today. And he went through a pretty significant physical maturation because he debuted in the UFC when he was 23. So it's certainly possible. And again, there's part of me that is rooting for Krylov because divisional turnover is overdue in that division.
And Khabib also had those long injury setbacks.
Yeah, he had that period of about 2 years when he was off.
It can really, that can derail careers sometimes.
It has in the past. I think it also tends to have more catastrophic effects. The more there's a weird thing here. If you either rush back or if it happens later in your career.
Right.
Believe it or not, I think it did Khabib a bit of good because when he came back from that layoff in particular, he finally kind of had all the pieces of his game figured out and really dialed in to a degree that he didn't quite have before. But
other than the tiramisu and the weight cutting.
Again, the weight cutting became much more difficult for him. I mean, this is the craziest thing watching some of his older fights.
Yeah.
He's the smaller guy.
Yeah.
Like, he debuts against Kamal Shalarus, and Shalarus is bigger through the torso than Khabib.
Shalarus he competed in the Olympics, didn't he?
I don't remember. I don't think so. He might have.
Like, Shalarus was he wasn't a great MMA fighter, but he was a good wrestler.
I know he did wrestle internationally. That I remember. I don't remember the platform he competed on. Khabib's smaller than Gleison Tebow, how that man made 155 consistently without failing a number of drug tests for diuretics is a mystery to me. He's smaller than Pat Healy. Like, there's a bunch of those old lightweights from, 6-7 years ago that Khabib at that point in time was just smaller than, not even just like height-wise, but, if you looked at his torso, just was not the bigger guy. And we think of him as this monstrous lightweight, and he is at this point, but, man, there were some gorillas in that division not all that long ago who I don't think could do it nowadays.
I think we can just do quick hits for the rest of the card for this one.
Yeah, the rest of this card, there's a few hidden gems here that I'll try to point out, but
there are.
You have Shoeface, Antonio Carlos Jr., and Uriah Hall currently listed to be next, depending on where you're looking at. This is a big fight for both guys. Shoeface is coming off of that setback to Ian Heinisch that derailed his, 5-fight winning streak, I think it was? Yeah. So that's a pretty big deal. And Uriah Hall, Mr. Choke Artist, knocked out someone in the third round after losing badly the previous two rounds.
Lewis. Cab Driver City.
Lewis fought again in the UFC, I think, and lost. Anyway. So both guys kind of in need of a win. I'm actually leaning towards Shoeface because Uriah Hall. We have another light heavyweight bout between a couple of actual prospects. We have Misha Cirkunov, who we were all kind of high on for a while. And boy, did that not pan out. As he's battling Jimmy Crute, who's undefeated with 2 wins in the UFC. Paul Craig and Sam Alvey, okay, not elite level opposition, but he beat them both pretty decisively. And so that's a relevant fight for the light heavyweight division. I kind of like Crute, actually, as Cirkunov has a lot of tools, but there's stuff that's just not quite clicking. Marvin Vettori and Andrew Sanchez are scheduled to fight. I struggled to pick Andrew Sanchez to win anything. I'm actually going to go with Vettori there. Sanchez is just... He's on a 2-fight winning streak, but the UFC kind of started treating him with kid gloves after he got battered by Anthony Smith and Ryan James. And the gloves are kind of coming off a little bit here. Vittori's fairly legitimate. We have heavyweights because God hates me. Augusto Sakai will fight Marcin Tybura. Sakai coming off of a win over Arlovsky, right? Yeah, terrible fight, but he won. Whereas Tybura, a guy that had some potential at one point, but 1-3 in his last 4. Not so much now. Probably Sakai, but boy, that fight's probably gonna suck. Todd Duffy, good. Why? Just why? Todd Duffy will fight Jeff Hughes. How long has it been since Todd Duffy fought? I have to see this because... Yeah, Todd Duffy last fought in July of 2015 in one of the worst fights you'll ever see when he was knocked out by Frank Mir in the first round.
When I saw he was fighting on the card, I kind of did a double take.
Yeah, I forgot he existed and was happier.
I remember he existed. I'm like, Todd Duffy is still in the UFC?
Yeah, apparently.
He stopped fighting, but I guess not.
I know a little bit. He did suffer a few injuries. I think at one point he was scheduled to fight someone else and then wound up having a shoulder injury, I think. And he's just not even been scheduled since. Bizarre that he's still around. He's fighting Jeff Hughes, who has, I think, one fight in the UFC. Because they brought him in to fight one of their pet projects, and Maurice Green. And they fought to another somewhat close fight that I can't remember who I thought won. I'm going to go with Jeff Hughes, but crappy heavyweights just end quickly, please. Louis Smolka will fight Ryan McDonald. That's a good fight. Smolka's had a real up and down kind of existence in the UFC, and that sucks. He's 1-1 in his last two. He got choked out by Matt Schnell. The really sick transition, actually. Matt Schnell's good. Ryan McDonald lost his UFC debut against Chris Gutierrez. I'm going to go with Smolka there, but that's a bit speculative on my part. Cole Smith will fight Miles Johns. I know nothing about either gentleman. I think Smith has fought once in the UFC. Yeah, he beat Mitch Gagnon. Johns also undefeated. Yeah, making his debut off of the Contender Series. Look, neither guy has more than 10 fights. Flip a coin. I don't know what to tell you. Kyle Prepolek will fight Aaron Hubbard. I don't know what to make of this. Aaron Hubbard lost his UFC debut. Yeah, Davi Hamosh kind of schooled him on the ground. Prepolek's fought in the UFC before. Yeah, lost to Nordine Taleb. That's kind of a softer touch for Prepolek, I think. And they're in Canada, so they're trying to give a few Canadians winnable fights. Brad Katona will fight Hunter Azure. That is a name. He's undefeated, coming in off of the win on the Contender Series. Katona won some pointless season of The Ultimate Fighter, and then lost it promptly, beat Matthew Lopez, and then lost to Merab Dvalishvili. I don't know about that one. I mean, Katona's got some skills, but I don't know. Azure's also probably at the level of opposition he's used to beating. I'll go with Katona. And then kicking everything off, Chaz Skelly will fight Jordan Griffin. Oh, Andrew Sanchez was supposed to fight David Branch originally in this card. That fight makes more sense on some levels. Anyway, Skelly is... I think he's coming off a win. Nope, lost to Bobby Moffett. He got choked out in that. Was that the choke that wasn't actually in? I think that was the choke that the ref, that was the instance where the ref waved it off, but he was not actually unconscious in the hold. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah. So anyway, that's what he's coming off of. While his opponent, Jordan Griffin, is lost to Dan Ige in his UFC debut. A lot of those guys on this card. I'm gonna go with Skelly, but I wonder if Skelly wouldn't be better off moving up given his frame and just what that weight cut might be doing to him. And in theory, the UFC is looking for a replacement for Sergey Hadosko, who was supposed to fight Michel Pereira. Hadosko pulled out of the fight, and again, in theory, they're looking for a replacement. They got another couple of days to actually find one. All right. Again, there's a few there's a few gems in there, kind of hidden, but they exist. So, anything on that undercard you're looking forward to?
Let's see. Chaz Skelly fighting Jordan Griffin. In Antonio Carlos Jr. versus Uriah Hall for Antonio Carlos Jr.
Yeah, Shoeface is a surprisingly engaging fighter.
I'm a fan of Shoeface, yes.
I couldn't tell you why I am. I mean,
he's a fun. He usually has fun, exciting fights, and I think he's a bit of an underrated fighter.
Yeah, and his jiu-jitsu game is absolutely top notch, and again, he's just a really kind of, his fights aren't always, wild, but they're really engaging to me for some reason. So
with Heinisch, he was he was in the middle of a very good run.
Yeah. And even in the Heinisch fight, had a good first round and then just kind of faded a little bit. Alrighty. You know what? Let's go ahead and start off with our news segment here with BJ Penn. I talked a little bit about this last week, and we have now word from Dana White. I believe what he said was, that's a wrap on BJ Penn. He'll never fight again, et cetera, et cetera. So I assume his fight with Nick Lentz is now off. Here's kind of the thing about this. And this can get sticky legally. First of all, let me be clear. I said in my piece last week, BJ Penn shouldn't be fighting anywhere. That's just my take on it. But if he is, the UFC, Dana White did not say they were releasing him. And if BJ Penn is under contract to the UFC and can get sanctioned to fight and wants to fight, they are legally obligated to offer him fights. That is and let me be clear, I have no issue with that arrangement as a general rule. That's probably how it should be. So the UFC can't sign someone, pay them nothing, and just never offer them any fights. Like, there's too much opportunity for abuse of power in that situation. And let's all not kid ourselves, they absolutely would. But in the instance of BJ Penn here, if he can get a license to fight, is willing and wants to fight, the UFC is obligated to offer him fights as long as he's under contract to them.
I mean, have you read his contract? Do you know what he has going on?
That is the generalized conditions under which contracts of this nature operate.
We don't know what Penn has him right. We're speculating.
No, that's not speculation. That is the legal precedent for combat sports athletes.
Okay.
That's not just the UFC. That's everywhere.
Did Penn attain a provisional or license for this fight?
That's the question. There are procedural things in play here. If no commission will license BJ Penn, and they shouldn't, it's not an issue because he can't fight. But if he can, and given the ineptitude of commissions, there's every chance he might find someone somewhere that will license him to fight. It does muddy the waters legally.
So this fight was supposed to happen in New York.
Some part in November, right?
I mean, so basically, you're basically saying Penn has a legal recourse. I just feel like if he tried to bring a legal thing here, I think it would get laughed out of court.
Penn's well, there's different things that can. Hang on,
I recall, like Mark Hunt organized a lawsuit against the UFC over the Brock Lesnar business, and not all of them, but as I recall, didn't most of the charges against the UFC get thrown out?
The way Hunt had worded all of them, yes, all but one were dismissed. They're currently dealing with an antitrust lawsuit under different conditions. The issue here is less BJ Penn alleging anything that the UFC's doing, and more the UFC violating.
I don't know. I don't see this as a violation, considering
again,
UFC has a code of conduct policy. We know that.
In theory.
We know it's not a theory. They announced that they do. And the UFC can argue that these actions are a violation of their code of conduct.
That is the thing they could do.
And that Penn was not fit, or in the right mindset to fight. So I feel like you're being a bit too.
Well, the UFC
being a bit too aggressive on this argument, Robert.
Well, hang on. The UFC can present the argument that he's not fit to fight. They get no say in the matter. They get a say in whether. Hang on.
It seems like they do. It seems like they do.
Hang on. They get a say in who they keep under contract. the athletic commissions determine whether or not you are fit to fight.
If fighters agree to a code of conduct, I think that's part of it. I have not heard anything about the athletic commissions ruling on BJ Penn, quite frankly.
Again, there's no issue that has been brought up yet. I'm pointing out something that could happen in the future.
So since it hasn't, I can't really say absolutely. And I feel maybe hypothetically, if BJ Penn were to bring up a legal action here, I don't think it would get far at all. I'm sorry.
Look, what would happen is BJ Penn would bring up that the UFC violated his contract, therefore voiding it so he could fight elsewhere.
I mean,
that's
the
most likely outcome of what would happen.
I mean, if they want a Wanderlei Silva, BJ Penn here, I mean, I don't think it would be the worst thing at this point. As sad as this whole situation is, I mean, but even if the UFC were to do that, that's hardly a huge win for BJ Penn because his life, it's just, man, it's rough to watch this at this point.
I completely agree. I mean, again, I'm pointing out a procedural element that might come into play in the future. Of course, who knows? BJ could make a few mea culpas, and in 3 weeks, Dana White goes, "Yeah, the fight with Lentz is back on."
I don't know if it's drugs. I don't know if it's head trauma.
Both. Who knows?
I mean, it's, man.
Yeah, drugs, alcohol, head trauma, some combination of all.
It's tougher watching this descent than Matt Hughes.
Yeah, Hughes was kind of all at once in that respect. We've been seeing this decline in BJ for a lot of years. And it's been predictable, and yet for some reason he doesn't get finished in the first round by Clay Guida in 2019, and who are you to say he shouldn't be fighting? Shut up. All right, I don't say too many people shouldn't be fighting. I'm relatively libertarian on this. Like, it's your life, man. Go forth and do.
And no, I'm not a doctor, but I feel like there are very few people on this planet who would disagree with it at this point.
You'd think, but
I'm sure Nick Lentz disagrees, but I'm sure Nick Lentz would just love to brag about saying he beat BJ Penn.
Oh, did you not see what Nick Lentz offered to do?
Yeah, I did, and I was.
You know the weird thing about Lentz? He's a weird enough guy. I think he means it.
I think he definitely means it, and it kind of made me angry.
I don't know. I mean, look, if he's offering to basically give 10, a detox facility, like, come up here, we'll, do the life coach thing for a little bit, try to get you back on track.
I remember reading Nick Lentz saying.
I think that's what he said. Like, he offered to, house BJ Penn for the weeks while they train and go leading up to and then go through the fight. And
here's what I read him saying. Okay. Somebody needs to talk to BJ, and that's the whole reason I took this fight in the first place. The whole reason I took this fight in the first place, BJ, is I told you need to get your life together. We can have a little peace offering here. Not only will I beat Penn up, but I will teach him and I will help him get out of Hawaii where the cameras are sucking him in, where people are taking videos of him on the street. I'm going to help him more than he's ever been helped in his life. Now, I'm still going to kick his ass for money at the same time, but I'm still going to help him. This was from TMZ Sports.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was referencing. And you know what?
I don't know. Kind of put.
I can see why that's off-putting. I think Lentz has a bit of a point about Hawaii. I don't want to. I might piss some people off when I say this. Look, Hawaii, and let me be clear, Hawaii is not a bad state, all things considered. Yeah. But it's got problems. I mean, everywhere does. But there's a reason that, Dog the Bounty Hunter could go for 15 seasons running exclusively in Hawaii. So
he could be part of a bad crowd down there. I don't know. It's unfortunate.
Yeah,
I just wish he would get help, or I don't know, do something.
Agreed. That's a man that needs help.
Go to a rehab center. I don't know, something, anything.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's not like he comes from a well-to-do family too. It's not like he came from a bad background, you know?
True.
Now, I don't know. I mean, for all I know, his parents could have been bad parents. I don't know. But on a superficial level, they seem like, from what I've seen of his parents, they seem like decent people, you know? But I don't really know. Maybe he has leeches around him who are just destroying him. I don't truly know all that's going on, but I know that he's not in a good place right now, and I think he desperately needs help. Just because this story just keeps getting worse and worse, and I fear. And I'm not trying to say this to be a horrible person. I fear him dying and just getting into. I fear the worst for him, and I don't want that to happen to him. You know, I don't want him to be a tragedy. I don't want him to. I don't want him to. I don't want this to be a tragic story, but it just keeps getting worse, like with every passing story, and it has not been helped by the fact that he's been allowed to continue fighting through all this.
Yeah, I said last week that if there's not some kind of drastic change, we all know how this story is going to end, and it's badly. So let's, hopefully it does change.
And I'm surprised he's been able to stay just with it. He hasn't served any serious jail time yet through all this.
Yeah. That remains to be seen. So.
Maybe that's the Hawaiian or justice or legal system speaking for you, but
some of it might be the system. Some of it might be.
My problem with the UFC on this whole thing was that it took this much to get them to pull that fight. It should not have taken this much because I feel like we've been past. I feel like he's been over the edge for even longer than this.
Yeah, look, I agree, and I agree. I don't think it should take this level of public scrutiny to get them to behave in an ethical and moral fashion, but it does.
This isn't the first public incident with him, as I recall.
Nope, it is not.
There have been a lot of other. I mean, what I would call what's even more severe than a warning sign or a red flag, Robert?
I couldn't tell you.
Well, there have been a number of incidents. This is just one in a string of incidents he's been involved in lately.
Yeah, that's true. And I'm with you. I hope he gets the help that he needs because, again, I have no medical profession training whatsoever. I don't think you need it to know that that's a man who needs help.
I don't disagree with the things Dana White said when he talked to Brett Okamoto about this. I just disagree that we had to get to this point.
Yeah.
And Dana White did say, to all the people, who would say this is a bad idea, blah, blah, blah. Unless you're a doctor, take a hike. Which I found...
Suddenly there's enough TMZ footage that he's, okay, no, we're going to we're going to do this now. But I'm not a doctor, Dana. Shouldn't I shut up?
I mean,
you bald hypocrite.
First, that's a little condescending, And second of all, I don't think you have to be a doctor. To me, it doesn't take a doctor to acknowledge and realize that this man's life is in shambles and something is clearly very wrong with him right now. To me, it just takes all it needs to do that is common sense and just general human compassion, And I'm not saying Dana has no compassion.
I'll say it.
All right, if you want to say, I believe he can be a man of compassion. I do believe that, but I mean, I feel like he's made excuses for Penn for too long. He's tried to do that, and I don't know why.
Because he could make money off it.
I mean, to me, the last time BJ made money was probably when he fought GSP.
So no. He had several fights after that where he was still drawing. Hang on.
Maybe. I guess, okay, the fight with Diaz, I guess.
The Diaz one did okay. I would say last time...
Even that fight was not... to me, at the time, it was not terrible that fight was made.
I would say probably the last time he was in a position that drew somewhat well.
John Fitch, probably.
No. Because they weren't the main event on that card.
It was one of the biggest fights on that card, though.
It was up there, yeah. I would, you know what? Let me be clear. I hated this fight for a lot of reasons, but his third fight with Frankie, again, hated the fight. Let me be clear about this. I hated BJ at featherweight. I thought it was a pointless fight on a personal level. But I think
it was going to look that terrible.
Also true. I think that was the last time when Penn probably had enough name value to potentially justify that fight going forward.
You can't just say because he'll make money off of it, because I don't even think that's a factor.
Well, hold on. Look, I'm talking about objectively. Like, that doesn't stop. I think that's the last time objectively he was worth it. That doesn't mean that's the last time he was.
But
I mean, he main evented his return against Yair Rodriguez.
But the thing, Dana said all those things about Chuck Liddell fighting Tito Ortiz.
Yep.
And none of the things he said about that were wrong. But then he goes right around and booked BJ Penn against Clay Guida. That fight should not have happened.
Not at all. That fight absolutely should not have happened. And
he was ready to book a fight between BJ Penn and Nick Lentz. Because apparently BJ Penn talked him into it. I don't know what that means.
I don't know either.
But it bothers me. And I know Dana White probably does not care about looking or sounding like a hypocrite.
Look, he's a fight promoter. They're all two-faced.
Okay, but I'm just saying, in the future, when these instances come up, and they are going to come up, just by the nature, because this is part of the nature of the business too. Sadly, I'm going to try to be constructive here. Is try to just think about this a little bit more before you agree to it or say yes. That's my I'm going to try to be constructive here. That's what I would ask him to do. Whatever, but whatever. I'm not a fight promoter. I'm not the president. I haven't made hundreds of millions of dollars. And I'm not being sarcastic here.
No, he's made that.
It's not my call, but to me, it's ridiculous to say if you're not a doctor, you should shut up about this topic.
I completely agree. We're not dealing with the minutia of expertise when it comes to this situation.
It's like because you can do that about anything, unless you're a politician, unless you're a soldier, unless you're a firefighter, unless you're a police officer. You can't talk about anything. Like, come on here.
And I will say this: you
can't talk about fine cuisine, whatever.
And again, there are circumstances where that might be an appropriate insight to know that you lack. Then there's situations like this that, you know what? I really don't need 8 years of medical school to know this.
But plenty of people will talk about anything, even though they don't have that perspective of being such and such. So it's a silly thing to say.
Again, especially in this instance, in
this instance, because BJ Penn has had those very public and just very troubling incidents. I mean, just going back to the Frankie fight, how bad he looked in that fight, how he looked emaciated and just like a zombie. And I don't feel like that's an exaggeration, correct?
No, he looked awful. Like, physically, that is the worst he's looked before or since.
So, all right.
I watched that fight and just I don't get uncomfortable watching fights all that often.
In better news, we have our main event for UFC 244.
Yes, we do. Jorge Masvidal and Nate Diaz will main event the UFC return to Madison Square Garden.
5-round main event, non-title fight.
First one in a while for pay-per-view. But
the UFC had been really just bullish on sticking to that rule. Like we even thought that Diaz versus Poirier, when that was on the table at one point, was big enough it could have been a pay-per-view non-title main event. That probably should have gotten 5 rounds, correct? I think you would agree.
Was it Diaz and Poirier, or was it McGregor and somebody?
Oh, Diaz and Poirier, it was not booked to be.
I do. You're right. I remember them announcing they were basically making that fight, and then it fell through because of that. I do remember that now. Yeah.
Well, I recall it fell through because Poirier got injured. And then they never put it back together.
Yeah.
What I recall.
Yeah. I remember that situation. Yeah. Look, again, I don't mind if you have a kind of generalized policy of title fights being your main events, because the majority of the time you should defer to that kind of prestige when it's on the card. However, there are plenty of exceptions to that. And a fight like this is, in fact, one of them. This is the main event. If you put this fight on a card in a different capacity, everyone knows which fight everyone's shown up for. It's Diaz and Masvidal. I'm happy with the fight. I look forward to watching it and enjoying it. I kind of like Masvidal as far as the fight itself goes. But the welterweight division's in a bit of an odd spot now. And this is not just them, but I don't mind kind of talking about some of what's going on with Usman around this same issue. So again, Diaz and Masvidal for the baddest MFer belt. I hope they don't make a cheap belt, but just use it in promotional material, but we don't need a physical belt.
They better make that cheap belt, and if they don't have the cheap custom belt for that fight, I'm going to be ticked off.
No, because if they have...
You said it. Dana White promised it. I want it.
If he went on record saying that they're going to make something, then okay, you have to make it, and then it has to be defended.
He went on record. He said it. It has to be... He said it would be a one and done, but yes.
Ridiculous. You know what? Hang on. As stupid as that... Let me be clear. As much as I hate gimmickry in MMA, there's a couple of individual, kind of unofficial titles that I wouldn't hate if they trotted out the occasional one-off belt for. Something like Most Violent.
Make a gimmicky one-off belt. I want it. I'm sorry.
Look, it's okay. Everyone enjoys things differently, and when I don't care for it, but plenty of people do. I'm not expressing displeasure.
But what didn't happen here is a whole story.
Yeah, to me, that's a bit of a thing, because I think initially they were looking to do Usman and Covington as the main event.
To both of them, they could not make a deal with Covington for that fight.
Well, that's what's been reported so far.
This is all from ESPN, so I would consider it pretty reputable. Then they tried to book Usman versus Masvidal for the welterweight title. And then Usman apparently refused to fight Masvidal, or they couldn't make a deal with Usman for a fight with Masvidal. Then now this is where it gets even more bizarre. And this is from ESPN. This is not me. The UFC reportedly threatened to strip Usman of the welterweight title, and then they were looking into making Masvidal versus Leon Edwards for the vacant undisputed welterweight title for this card. But then before they could really start putting that together, the opportunity for Masvidal versus Diaz presented itself, and that's how we ended up here.
Okay. I've said this in the past. I understand that matchmaking is exponentially more difficult than the average fan will give it credit for. All right, I acknowledge this. You're dealing with,
but like,
hang on.
We ended up at this point, but all that is just insanity to me.
Yeah, like again, I understand that it's more difficult than the average fan will give it credit for. There's monetary negotiations, there's timing, there's injuries, there's travel accommodations. There's a lot of moving pieces, and I know that it is, again, significantly more difficult than even I'm giving it credit for, probably. But every now and then, it's just not that hard. And the top of welterweight right now should go like this. By all logic, Usman and Covington fight for the title. Edwards fights Tyron Woodley in a fight to potentially rebound Woodley if he's going to get back into the title picture. Your streaking contender Leon Edwards gets a big name opportunity to fight for a former champion. And Diaz and Masvidal fight because, yes, that's what should be happening. And it shouldn't be this hard. I don't know which party is being more obstinate around which given issue. I do find it, I won't say ironic, but deeply revealing that every time some other fighter in the UFC have a bit of a dust-up, the media is happy to point out the UFC's shortcomings. Anytime it's the UFC and Covington, it's Covington's fault. Just pointing out a pattern there. And hey, look, I'm sure Covington's not the easiest guy to deal with from a contract situation.
But like, why would Covington turn this down? Or
that's one of the reasons I tend to be a bit dubious about that.
I want to know why they couldn't make terms with Covington, or like what was the falling out with Covington is what I want to know.
I would like to know that. I'd like to know if there was some kind of monetary issue with Kamaru Usman. I know the UFC and Diaz apparently hit a negotiation block at one point. That's why Dana White, when he was talking with Brett Okamoto at one point, said, yeah, I don't think about Nate Diaz big picture. It's the same type of promotional misdirection.
He said after the fight with Pettis that he moves the needle.
Again, this is the same kind of misdirection, downplaying of important fighters the UFC does anytime to publicly negotiate.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, welterweight at the top right now is exceptionally good. Kamaru Usman is a really, really interesting fighter and a really great fighter in a lot of ways.
Huh.
Colby Covington is a deeply interesting fight. Look, put aside kind of the gimmickry and the persona. Colby does a lot of great stuff in the cage.
Right.
Those two match up very well. Jorge Masvidal, the longtime veteran, finally putting everything together and on this streak of just murderous knockouts. Okay, streak being 2 in this case, but you can sell it that way easily. Nate Diaz comes out of hiatus and wants to reinsert himself into the welterweight division. Leon Edwards, a guy on like a 7 or 8 fight winning streak. Tyron Woodley, former champion. Does he still have anything left in the tank? And only lost to Usman recently. That's a great top six fighters. And for some reason, it's a giant clown fiesta over there when it comes to getting anything done.
Do you think with Colby Covington, it was a matter of he wanted maybe like a championship level payout because he's a former interim champion, and maybe he still wanted pay-per-view points or something?
It could have been that. It could have been timing. It could have been they said, we're only going on this date, and for some reason that doesn't work for him. For whatever reason. I don't know, but that's another thing that comes up.
He came back and took the fight with Lawler.
Won dominantly.
Yeah, won dominantly. I mean, what is wrong? I mean, because November is not. It's not right away. I mean, I don't think
it's not that November's far enough to not be a short notice thing.
Yeah, it's not extremely short notice. Maybe now he could have an injury. I don't know. but he got his he had no surgery or something last year.
Yeah, he had some kind of deviated septum that he had fixed
so
last year.
He apparently got that taken care of. I other than maybe he wanted pay-per-view points because he is technically on paper a former interim champion that he got stripped. I'm just not understanding I'm not understanding why we couldn't have seen that fight.
I don't understand it either. And again, I don't know if he's being unreasonable in his demands or if the UFC is being unreasonably obstinate as far as we will give you nothing.
Now, on Usman's part, to me, there's no justifiable reason for him to turn down a fight with Masvidal.
That's a little bit surprising to me.
Because, and now look, this is only based on the information from the ESPN report, and that could only be UFC sources, what they're saying. We haven't heard from Usman's side of this. We haven't heard about Usman what he has had to say. And Usman might not have had any say in this. It might have been all Ali Abdelaziz because that's his manager, right?
I think so. I'd have to double check, but
they were dealing with the managers and they said it has to be this. And some fighters leave it all to their managers. So I mean, we don't know. We don't know Khabib's and his team's side of this. Why did I say Khabib? Usman. We don't know Kamaru Usman and his team's side of this. They could have a completely different perspective on how this played out. But even still, taking all that into account, to me, there's no justifiable reason for him to refuse a fight with Masvidal. Because Masvidal is a deserving contender, whether you like it or not.
Yeah, the UFC wasn't pulling someone out of obscurity there. Like, again, Masvidal's on a good streak. He's highly ranked. That whole thing, that's just so bizarre to me that what is so very
unless it's false and they're smoke screening what really happened here.
Which, has happened in the past.
Which is possible. But if that's the information we have now, and if that's true, it makes no sense to me that he would turn down a fight with Masvidal. If that happened.
Yeah, if the version of events we have right now is 100% accurate, that makes no sense to me either.
And that reason in itself is one reason I'm a little suspicious. So, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I look forward to the inevitable drama that will play out as all fighter parties start accusing each other.
We have a couple months until 244, so let's see if this fight holds together.
I imagine it will. I've said this before about Nate Diaz. He doesn't really pull out of fights. The problem is getting him to sign to show up. But once he signs, he tends to be there.
It can still happen, though.
Also true. But yet, neither of these guys has much of a history of pulling out of fights once signed.
Right.
So anyway, hope it holds together again. Great fight.
Yeah, I love it. I mean,
what's not to like about the fight?
I am unhappy. I'm not unhappy we ended up with this. I'm just gobsmacked by all that took place to bring us to this point.
Yeah, I agree with that. All right, last little bit of matchmaking here as far as that goes. The UFC's return to Moscow has a main event. Former heavyweight champion Junior Dos Santos will meet Alexander Volkov. I like the fight. I have one issue with this, and again, I'm sure there's moving pieces here that I'm not aware of. However, let me present to you a series of events that make me think this should have gone a slightly different direction. Right now, Junior Dos Santos, I don't know how long this is going to last for, but he's on the Brazilian version of Dancing with the Stars. This is among the top 5, I think might even be top 3 most viewed programs on television in Brazil. And the literal next week after the Moscow card, the UFC is in Sao Paulo. I'm not entirely sure why you wouldn't put this same fight together in Brazil to kind of help further capitalize on what might be the hottest period of Junior's celebrity status in Brazil. Now, again, maybe they just couldn't find a better main event for Moscow. Okay. Again, I am free to acknowledge there's a bunch of moving pieces here I am not aware of. Junior coming off the back of a highly publicized television series in Brazil, fighting in Brazil, seems like a no-brainer to me. But other than that, again, the fight itself, I'm perfectly okay with. Good fight, both men strikers, different styles. Volkov more of a technician, Junior's more of a one-punch kind of knockout artist. Both men can fight for 5 rounds. No problem with the matchmaking. The location's a little bit iffy to me, but again, if they couldn't find anything better to main event, I understand. I do understand that. All right. You have anything else that we wanted to touch on, Jeff? Or
for this week?
All righty then. Let me check Twitter one more time. Nope, I don't think anything new is broken. So, yeah, let's just go ahead and get into plugs. Again, you've had a couple of weeks off. So, what would you like to plug that people might have missed?
Some D23 coverage you can still check out over in Movies TV. The next movie reviews will be Goldfinch and Ad Astra, Brad Pitt. Looks like kind of like a similar movie to Interstellar. I'll be reviewing those films coming up. So it's been a little dry for movie reviews for a little bit, but I'll be getting back into it this month. In the podcast area, we've been putting out quite a few of those. So on the 411 Wrestling podcast, you can check it out. 411 Mania YouTube, you can check it out. Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify. My most recent interviews are the daughter of Teal Piper. Teal Piper, the daughter of Rowdy Roddy Piper, who is making her in-ring debut for WOW Women of Wrestling. Exclusive interview with her. An exclusive interview with David McClain, the creator of WOW and also one of the creators of the original Glow, Gorgeous Ladies of Wrestling. The promotion, not the Netflix TV show. And next is also Selena Majors, who was part of the original Glow and also is the head trainer for the new WOW iteration. So a lot of WOW Women of Wrestling coverage through the podcast. I might be going to the Season 2 TV tapings, but I'm still waiting to hear back details. So fingers crossed all that works out. And I hopefully made some headway with UFC by way of ESPN Plus, but it's still in the very early stages. So we'll see. I can't say one way or the other yet.
Well, I hope that works out for you.
I mean, to me, there's no reason we shouldn't be covering UFC live. But it's a bit of a difficult thing, to get the check mark, as it were. Sort of like getting verified on Facebook or Twitter. If anyone knows how to do that, by the way, I'd appreciate it.
It is needlessly complicated. There's plenty of people with higher profiles than, you or I have that can't get verified for one reason or another. Wish I knew.
Well, I think I deserve to be verified.
I don't care. Anybody who wants to impersonate me, they're welcome to it.
Don't impersonate me. But yeah, so those are my plugs.
All right. As for myself, this Tuesday, Mark Radulich, Alexis Hana, and I will be reviewing It Chapter 2. Last week there was last week was our TV party for Hannibal Season 3. I still miss that show deeply. So deeply. I love that show. So you can look forward to those. Week after that, Mark and I will be reviewing Dark Crystal Age of Resistance, I think.
Netflix Hannibal Season 4. Let's make it happen.
Yeah, I wish. I would be so happy. But I can't have nice things, so I know it won't happen.
I'm sure Mads Mikkelsen will be on board.
Apparently everyone would be. Like, they've all, I know both Brian Fuller and Mads Mikkelsen have done interviews where they've mentioned that, yeah, everyone involved, all of the relevant parties would still be interested in coming back.
It's not even unrealistic because...
I mean, they brought Lucifer back after however many seasons off the air.
Yeah, and they brought the X-Files back for 2 seasons.
Yeah, I know.
Lucifer, Longmire.
Longmire wasn't off the air that long, though.
No, but I mean, they gave it the, you know, not technically a lot of stuff has gotten revived. A lot. You never would have imagined like 10 years ago.
Yeah, and again, I hope, foolishly, because I loved Hannibal, but so you can listen to Mark and I talk about season 3, the ups and downs.
But I greatly respect what that show did.
So, yeah, you can listen to that. Again, our review of it, chapter 2, not as good as chapter 1, but we'll go through the specifics on Tuesday on Damn You Hollywood. We'll be back here next Sunday. So, yeah, this Saturday I'll be covering UFC on ESPN Plus 16. We'll be back here next Sunday to review that. And, yeah, we should be previewing UFC on ESPN Plus 17, which will be... Boy, that is not a good card. Your main event is Yair Rodriguez and Jeremy Stevens, which is not the worst fight in the world, but if that's the best fight on your card, yeesh.
I'm looking very much forward to the Damn You Hollywood show for the Joker.
That's going to be something, I suppose.
I'm almost, you know what's even crazier? I'm looking forward more to that than the actual movie.
I don't know how I'm going to react to that movie. I genuinely don't.
I'm genuinely curious to see how you and Mark Radulich are going to react to it.
Mark's either going to love it or hate it. I think that's the type of movie that there's not going to be a lot of in between for Mark as far as his personal enjoyment.
I'm very curious to see what Mark will think of it. So yeah.
I mean, I know some people have gotten like more hyped as more trailers have been released for it. Not so much for me.
Me either, but I feel like it will be interesting either way.
I mean, look, I'd be down to watch. My philosophy on this going into the movie is if you take the Joker out of the equation, like that name,
yeah,
and this is just Joaquin Phoenix's intense portrayal of a downtrodden, marginalized man descending into madness, I'm all in. Like, Joaquin Phoenix is a more than capable enough actor that just watching him do that is enough for me to be interested. So that's kind of how I'm approaching the movie. But we'll see. Again, when it comes out, I'm going to see it. We will review it. And
this would be like your favorite movie ever, basically.
It would have it would have to overcome some stiff opposition to climb into my favorite movie ever. Not saying it's impossible, but unlikely.
Terminator has a lot of those qualities you just described.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay, so next week we'll be back to preview that event and review this week's. Fair enough. All right, we'll see you all next week. Jeff and I will be back here. Thank you all very much for listening. Thank you for telling your friends about us if they're interested in the sport of mixed martial arts. Heck, if you know someone you don't like, but you know they like the sport, point them in our direction. I guarantee you they will at least be a little bit disappointed, and you can have a small bit of vengeance. So thank you very much, everyone. We'll be back next week. Until then, stay safe out there, and please continue to be well, be safe, and behave.